So, hi, Madison. It's nice to meet
Hi.
you. I'm
Nice to
Kaylee.
meet you.
And hi, Madison. This is super fun for me because Madison and I go way back to, I think her mom shared her maternity clothes with my mom.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
So very far back. And then Kaylee and I go way back to high school rodeo, which is sadly feels like a long time ago now.
Kind of is.
Kind of, for sure.
So this is very, very fun. Two of my favorite people and in one place. It's pretty neat.
And
No, I'm
Madison,
really
I'll give you a quick kind of background of what we were going for and what we have going on.
okay.
Um, so I am more of a corporate girl. I definitely came from a ranching horse background, the only one in my family to go to college, and just wanted a more financially secure life. So right now I work in corporate finance, and I kind of got to the point in my life to where it's like, okay, I can pay my bills and everything's good there. Now what? So in like one day, I was like, I want to have 5 kids, I want to get married, and I want to do something I enjoy. I don't want to just work for money anymore. So I'm working on that. And part of that was, why don't I start a business about something that I'm really passionate about? And I'm really passionate about supporting women and really creating more of a global, um, I don't want to say a movement, but opening people's eyes more to the things that women struggle with and how difficult it is to kind of live up to the stigma of doing it all. And what does that mean? And is it okay for a woman to want to have activity for themselves that takes away from children? And, women that don't want to have children and how they deal with that. So I created a lifestyle brand, and this podcast is kind of in support of that. And so I
Okay.
really just want to walk through different women's lives and how they got to where they are and kind of growing up and different events that they experienced throughout their life to help other women and maybe give a perspective to, husbands, boyfriends, even sons of what it's like to be a woman and what are the different things that we worry about that maybe doesn't even cross their mind.
hmm
So that's kind of what I wanted to start with to give you an introduction of where we're going.
I guess I can jump in and introduce myself. I'm Carrie, and I grew up in a small town. Also, not organically with horses, but I got into riding horses at a young age and did that all through high school and went to college and became a nurse. And now I have been working as a nurse for almost 12 years. And I have been married for 10 years, and I have a little 2-year-old daughter named Andy, and who is hopefully sleeping right now. So, but that can 2-year-olds can be kind of unpredictable in that way.
So
It's
fun.
okay. It's all part of this deal, right? Everything that we have to deal with.
Yeah, so I figured it kind of went along with it.
Cue the baby crying.
Yes, yes, but, hopefully it looks like, I'm glancing over at the monitor, it looks like the baby's asleep.
Okay.
Good.
So, yeah, maybe, Madison, do you wanna introduce yourself and kind of a little bit
Yeah.
how you grow up and
Yeah. So my name is Madison Tate. I grew up with Carrie in a very small town, in a dry climate, which I now realize I love so much. Um, and I was there until after my freshman year. I moved away. My parents joined a nonprofit organization called Mercy Ships in Texas, and we moved there with my mom and my stepdad, but still went back and visited where Carrie lived quite often because my dad was there. And so I always kind of felt like I didn't belong anywhere. I was a California girl at heart, but living in Texas. But I fell in love with it and ended up staying there for quite a while. I did go to college in Oregon and got a nursing degree between there and Texas. I got married in the middle of college to, my best friend, and someone I never would have expected to be married to at the time.
So I think really quick, I just have to jump in and we have to back up to this a little bit because
Okay.
I remember Madison calling me. It was, I believe, our junior or senior year of high school and telling me like, hey, I have this friend and he would be perfect for you. And you have to come out to Texas and meet him.
How about this?
You
And I
snooze,
was
you
like,
lose, Gary.
she's like, he's like a
Yeah.
cowboy. And
Yeah.
I was like, oh wow, yeah, that sounds pretty good, like a Texas cowboy, like yeah. And then I was attending her wedding like 2 years later, 3 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh
Yeah.
my
to
gosh.
this Texas cowboy.
Yeah. Yep.
And you were
Yeah,
not the
literally.
cowgirl. You didn't grow up like that, did you?
No, none of that. Like my first experience, my aunt had high performance horses and like maybe got led around on them one or two times.
Okay.
And then my first experience was my husband at the time, just friends, and he called me. My dad was visiting, like, hey, you got to come real fast. This cow is having its baby and you need to come watch. And so like that was my first introduction was him. And then ever since I've been thrown in to all of it.
And you
So
guys
yeah,
met in, was it high school or college?
high school.
High
Yeah.
school. Okay.
Yeah. And then he
So,
followed me to college in Oregon. We got married in the middle of college and
wow.
I ended up having a baby. So college got delayed a little bit, but I still finished, which I mean plays into some of what you're talking about because my family wasn't super excited for me to get married so young. Looking back,
Yeah.
I'm thankful that I did. I can't imagine just spending my life with anybody else and having waited. But at the time, I'm in the middle of college and suddenly pregnant, not planning on it, and we both kind of panicked for a minute, and then said we're gonna figure it out. And I think everyone, my family was nervous getting married that I wouldn't finish school because my heart really was to have kids
Yeah.
um, and be a mom and raise a family. And so I think they thought I would give up on this other part of myself really easily and quickly. Um, but I'm so thankful I have a spouse who is determined and a finisher, and there was no way with his support of me that I wouldn't have. And so I did finish. It took a semester longer than I planned, but I did. And yeah, I learned a lot. I am an RN. I'm not a practicing RN. I practiced for a few years and then did decide to stay home with my kids.
What did your husband study in college?
So he's a builder.
Okay.
He's construction. He didn't go to college. He is College of Hard Knocks.
So
He's
he went
brilliant.
with you to college
Yes, he just followed me there so I could finish. Yep.
to
Yep.
support your, okay,
Yeah.
education and what you
Yeah.
wanted to do.
And that was in 2008. So the economy crashed. So there was no work for him in
Okay.
construction. So we quickly hightailed it back to Texas.
Okay.
Um, and then I could get in-state tuition. So that helps a lot.
Yeah.
uh, since my family was still there. So, and then we ended up living in Texas until 3 years ago. We were there.
Wow.
And we started the construction company. When I asked, I begged him to stay home. I was when I was pregnant with my second. And that's such a hard decision because you have these two incomes and you're living off these two incomes. But knowing that it's not the way you want to live, and we did want to get more cattle. We had a few, but we just wanted a different way of life. And so it was a big risk and a big like jump. And, you know, he said, if you get more involved in the construction business, then I think we can make it work. And so I did, and I have been involved in that realm ever since. We worked together every day. And we did get a bigger herd of cattle going when my son was about 6 months old and started selling direct market beef. And I started learning more and more. I pulled my first calf
Wow.
and kind of just jumped in at that point. So yeah, it's been a journey, and it's been fun because my nursing, I still get to use it. It still comes into play with the cattle. It just looks different.
It's just different, a little hairier and yeah.
Yeah, a little hairier. And cattle are so much more resilient than humans. We're big babies. So
Yeah.
Well, they don't have a choice. Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, they're lucky to have you though. Someone that's more of an expert than, yeah.
I guess a little bit. Yeah, some days. Sometimes I overthink it probably, but it's good. It's good background. And with kids, I mean, having nursing is priceless.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Like, I mean, you can probably avoid so many doctor's visits and stuff just by knowing like, oh yeah, this is gonna be okay. And
Right.
and then also
Yeah,
knowing, okay, we gotta go right now.
exactly.
Because especially with little boys. I mean, the girls too.
Yeah. No, definitely my boys. Definitely.
And
So
I'm
did the
sure,
cattle come from your husband's family? Is that where that started? Did they have a
Yeah, his
ranch?
family originally homesteaded, actually on his mom's side and dad's side, homesteaded in
Okay.
Colorado, which is now where we currently live. And they obviously they were in a ministry, but they taught sustainable agriculture all over the world with that ministry.
Wow.
So they still do that today. And so he always had animals, even though they didn't have a big ranch like his parents did as kids, they still always had that as a part of their lives. So it just trickled in for him, and it's definitely his passion. He was actually headed to be a horse trainer when we decided to start dating, and he kind of changed his trajectory. And I think that's like one of the things in hearing you talk that I was thinking about is we have dreams and we have things that we want to do, but they change and they shift because of other things we also want. And I think that's okay. And
Mhm.
even my nursing, like I do love it and I loved being an RN, but I'm so thankful that I did choose to walk away from it for a season. I may go back to it, I may not, I don't know. But it doesn't mean that it didn't add to my life. And then same with my husband and his wanting to train horses. He's now getting to do that a little bit with our own horses. And I don't know that he ever thought that would, be something he'd come back to. And so we may give up things and things may shift and we just don't know how it's going to look. And I think
Right.
sometimes we get caught up in wanting to pursue this and we have to do this. And it's just not always, I don't think that's always the best. There's a lot of life that happens in the process. It's okay to make a shift.
Was building the construction business strictly financial to help pay the bills initially? Or, I mean, saw some of your guys' work and it's incredible. So I see some passion there.
Yeah, such a hard question. I feel like we still struggle with that question today.
Okay.
Because I love design. It's a piece of me that I love it so much. And my husband loves the creativity of building. He is naturally very gifted in it. Um, so it does pay the bills. Like the ranch does not at this point. The goal is for us to switch more into ranching and less into construction in the future.
Right.
But I don't know that we'll ever give up building because there is just pieces that we just both really love about it. So yeah, I would say it's all of that.
And when did you have your second child?
So he is 10. And so 3.5 years between each. Actually, we have 3 kids, so there's
Okay.
3.5 years between all of them. Yeah.
And by the time that you had your second, were you working for a construction company and walked away from
Yeah.
nursing at that point?
So I worked up as a nurse until they finally moved me to days, which was like such a blessing.
Wow.
But
I
I
can
worked
attest
up
to
in,
that.
gosh, yeah. Anyone who does nights, bless you.
Yes.
Rough. Yeah, I worked up until 3 days before he was born. Which honestly, like looking back, I'm like, why did I do that? But it was like almost just like proving to myself I could, you know? I was so miserable. But yeah, so after that, yeah, I just jumped into the construction. And honestly, the really cool thing was his construction company just took off. I think for somebody who is self-employed and entrepreneurial, it's really hard to have a spouse working outside the home.
Mhm.
It's doable. We did do it, but it definitely, me moving home, allowed him to really, like the construction business to really soar, which was great because you don't know if that's what's going to happen when you make shifts. So that was
Right.
really cool. And then let's see, think we ended up pregnant with our third around the same time, and we were building our first home. And for years, I mean, we're builders, like we're building houses, we're doing construction. Everyone's like, you need to build a house. You need to build a house. Why haven't you built your own house yet? We were still renting. And I'm so glad we waited. We were able to save up and build with cash, which was really cool and unusual.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And obviously we were able to do it on the cheap, not cheap like quality, but
Right.
because we were the ones doing it, right? So we had a whole set of plans. I had this whole house designed. We were going to build it, and we went up in Oregon at the lodge in Mount Hood. And my husband goes, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I think I want to build a barn for a house. And I was like, no, because I'm thinking like a metal shop barn, which are all over Texas. I'm like, I'm not doing that. Like, you have this amazing gift. You can build beautiful things. Like, no. And he's like, hold on, hold on, hold on. So he shows me a video of timber framing, and he self-taught himself via YouTube to build a timber frame
Wow.
and built our first timber frame as our house. And then he's now started doing that as a specialty ever since. Which again, like I just love because there's so much beauty in it, and like the
It's
design
beautiful. Yeah.
super fun. So yeah, so that has also like created, we got a sawmill, we mill the logs, like it's from beginning
Wow.
to end, which is kind of cool. And I feel like also goes in line with like our ranching desires of sustainability and all that. So yeah, so that took off about the time my third child was born. And we've been doing that kind of ever since, more doing spec houses and the timber framing.
And how are you balancing your schedule with, I mean, I'm sure it's changed a lot over time, but with the kids and how much you're working and how much you need to support your husband, the kids, yourself, how have you kind of evolved as you've gotten wiser and older?
I think that like first answer is I don't balance at all. There's no way to. It's not up there. It's not possible. So I think it's a daily. And it's funny I'm saying this because I'm such a bad prioritizer, but it is a daily looking at like what today is most important. Is my eldest struggling? Do I need to push into her? Did my middle stay up all night on his iPad when he wasn't supposed to? Yes. So I'm going to pour into him today. Like it's taking day by day, like what's most important and trying to do that. And I think we moved 3 years ago to Colorado, which was a big shift. And there was a lot of life decisions. And I don't know, it was a big move, like bought a piece of land, nothing on it. It's been a lot of work. And it was, we had friends and family in Colorado, so we expected it to be a really easy transition, and it just wasn't. All transition is hard. It doesn't matter. And we didn't expect that. We'd already done construction work in Colorado. We just expected it to be easy. And so moving was really hard on me. And I'm the type of person that will have told you for the last 30 years that I'm like super chill. I go with the flow. Nothing stresses me out, yada, yada, yada. Well,
Until you try to build your own house with children.
there you
Yeah.
go. But I even would tell you that now to an extent, like I am somebody who definitely goes with the flow. If anyone's Enneagram, I'm an Enneagram 9. Like I definitely just fly under the radar. But about 3 years ago, I started having anxiety attacks. And that was a big eye opener for me of, okay, what's going on? And I realized now there's lots of physical things that I wasn't doing that were affecting it as well.
Yeah.
But there does come a point where you do have to sit back and be like, okay, where is too much? And because I'm somebody who goes with the flow, it's really hard for me to speak up and say, like, this is too much. I can't do this. And
Yeah.
I think as women, we probably all have a hard time of that in a lot of capacities to say, like, hey, I, I'm I'm at my max. Um, so I'm thankfully not there anymore. I'm doing so much better. I found out I had adrenal fatigue.
Oh,
So that was kind of where it all came from. And I'm super thankful that I was able to figure that out and then support my body appropriately. But
That's
yeah,
great.
I think also not feeling like I have to measure up to any sort of balance or standard was a huge piece of that. And knowing that it's okay that stuff's undone and it's going to be undone.
Right.
And figuring out what I do need to do today, right?
prioritizing, each day, because some days you're going to be like, stellar businesswoman, and you're going to be like out there like really working on your business, and that's like your priority. And then others days, your kid just needs to be held, or they need that extra TLC. And
Mhm.
there's probably a little bit of work and a lot of kids and a lot of a balance with being a wife in every day. But I think it's an important realization that those percentages or amounts can shift on the daily, and that you're not necessarily neglecting one by doing less one day. And
Right.
it's completely okay. It's not a uh, a measure of, you just can't be 100% of everything every day, and it's not a sustainable way to go.
Right. And not letting our productivity determine our worth for
Our
ourselves,
worth.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and I feel
Absolutely.
like in the transition, like that's where I was. Like I just
Mhm.
had to keep doing to like meet this. And it was my own expectation. No one had put that on me.
Days where like you really want to get the house clean, and you want to get the errands done, and you have this like mental list, and you can have roadblocks throughout the day, where your kids need other things, or maybe Evan needs help with something with the construction side of the business, or maybe a cow goes into labor. Like, I mean, there's just so many things that are like unexpected, and then all of a sudden that list that you were planning to get done kind of goes south, and you can leave
Yep.
that day either feeling very unproductive, or realize that you just had to have like a shift in priorities for the day.
Yep. And I think for me, like I'm generally not a super routine person. And I think I had it in my head. I mean, I definitely thrive with some routine but our life doesn't allow for it because of what you just said. There's just so many hats that we're wearing between ranching and construction. And so the routine can go out the window so quickly.
Mhm.
And I had it in my head that to be productive, I had to look a certain way. And I had a friend recently who she is type A, everything's so organized. And she just released me so much because she said, if what I'm doing or how this looks doesn't work for you, then
Yeah.
don't do it your way. Like figure out what works for you. And that was like so good to me because I look at her and I think she's so organized, she's getting so much done. Like I need to be like that. And she's like, but that's not going to work for you. So don't even try. Like you just
Yeah.
need to do it the way that works for you. And so that's been big for me.
Have you thought about who you are and what makes you happy and kind of gone through that journey of, am I living the life that I really wanted to live? Or has it been, since you got pregnant when you were young in college, has it been kind of a survival up to a certain point?
I feel like it depends on the season, honestly. Um, I think there's seasons where I feel like totally fulfilled. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is what I'm was meant to do. I even felt that way nursing, but then there's other things that are pulling that I want. And so that shifted. And we had a big, really devastating event in our family that kind of shook us about 6 years ago. And during that time, I mean, I was just like, what in the world? How is this our life? And but then the aftermath of that and the growth in my marriage and me as a mother, me in understanding myself better and going to counseling, like all the things, like I'm so thankful for it now looking back because it pushed all that a lot faster. But at that time, it seemed like we were in the pits, and I didn't feel fulfilled. But in that process, it did fulfill me. And by the end of it, I saw how I just understood me better and was in such a better place. With the ranching, I love it. And there are some days where I'm like, I can't imagine doing anything else. This is wonderful. And then there's days where my husband's he works a lot of construction in Texas still. And so he had taken off on a flight. He was in Texas and this new mom is in labor and my father-in-law has a broken hand.
Oh my gosh.
And he is not progressing. And so we start trying to pull the calf. It's not budging. And I'm like, what are we going to do? And my father-in-law tells me we have 2 hours or the calf's not going to make it. And I'm just like, oh my gosh. So I'm stuck making this decision of like what we're going to do. I call every vet I can think of in town. I am like ready to just cry. Finally get a hold of this vet. And I remember sitting there thinking, why are we doing this? Like, why is this my life? But a vet came, the calf came out, it had been like 4 hours and it was breathing. And so then the aftermath is like,
Right.
oh, this is why I'm doing this. So I don't know. I feel like it's again, day by day, moment by moment. I don't think I'm gonna feel fulfilled every day, and that's okay.
Yeah.
I think
I
you
don't
make a great point about like different seasons. And, especially after having my daughter, I've learned that like there's some seasons or periods that are just harder than others. And sometimes they're hard and you just have to like, it's a good reminder that it's a season because you're like, okay, this too shall end. And then sometimes it's like a great season and you're like, this is amazing. I don't ever want this to end. But like you were saying, is like you can kind of learn and grow in each season and in each period, and take it helps grow you as a person and helps you to find, kind of where you want to go next,
Yep.
and kind of
Yeah,
just
and like I said
continue
before,
your
that
path.
shifts and that's okay. Like
Mhm,
it's constantly evolving and changing, even like your story. Like
mhm.
Yeah.
it's always gonna look the same. Funny you were saying that with kids stages. I was thinking, I remember with my first daughter, she was like about 6. And I said first daughter, I only have one daughter. My first child. Uh she was 6 and I remember like looking at her thinking, I don't like you. Like, and I felt so terrible. I mean, instantly I was like, oh my gosh, that's awful to think that. And then I started like, I don't know how it came about, but I started researching like developmental stages and I was reading about like that age and that development stage. And I was like, oh, I like her. I just don't like this development stage of 6 years old because she is
Yeah.
100% pulling away from me and I hate it. Like, and so that realization was huge for me of like, it's not my child. It's just where we're at in life.
The knowledge giving you a different perspective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Have you found resources easily available for you as, like when you were a new mother and going through that? And then as you've grown and you said you've reached out for help a few times, and if you've worked through any issues that have come up in your marriage, has resources been available to you? And do you really lean into that kind of education to help get through those tough seasons?
Yeah, it honestly, again, depends on the season. I would say there's things like, so as a new parent, and I can't even remember the name of the book, and I would probably never suggest it to anyone at this point in time, because there's things I don't agree with in there, But the one thing I did do as a new parent is it had a schedule, which I am not a schedule person, but having a framework to work from as a first-time parent was phenomenal. And for me, learning to set a schedule where I didn't feed my child to sleep was big. And it kind of set that framework of like, okay, we can create her schedule where she eats at certain times and sleeps at certain times, and those do not interconnect. Was huge, especially as a working mom, because I could not be the one to feed her all the time. So that was huge, the schedule for the first time. And again, it went out the window after the first one, so I don't know, but I say that the schedule it's more like time block. I'm a homeschool mom as well. And it's like the time blocking, like that's really what it is. It's not like a strict schedule, we're time blocking.
Right.
And then we had one child that was like terrible twos to the next level. I was more 3-4, but anyways, he was tantrum city, and that was like a whole new thing because my first child didn't throw any tantrums and like could reason with you at a year old.
Yeah.
But Danny Silk stuff, he wrote, oh my gosh, now I can't think of the name of that. You'll have to put it in the links because I can't think of the name of the parenting book. But his ministry is Loving on Purpose. And then the book, Keep Your Love On, that 100% got me through that really hard season I talked about, and learning to understand myself and how to love other people in the midst of conflict. That really helped my marriage as well as my relationships with other people that were struggling. And something I still go back to constantly. I hand that book out to everybody. And then the other one that just came out with, I'm finishing now, his daughter, Brittany Serple, wrote Imperfect Parenting, and it's been phenomenal. Those are definitely my go-tos in that regard.
Maybe we should talk next a little bit about how Twin Pines Ranch was kind of born. You talked about moving to Colorado and that being kind of a tough transition, but then like how did you decide, like, I know you said that you had some cattle and you wanted to grow your herd, and then kind of how did it go from there?
Yeah, so when my 10-year-old was born, we did grow a herd. We bought a pretty big herd. I mean, for us, it was like 20 some cows versus like 3. And then it was only a couple years and we lost our lease. And so we sold out and kind of had to scale back, which was a big letdown. So coming to Colorado, a big push of moving here was to be able to get land and have a lot of animals, because the leased land is, it's hard on leased land. And so everything just fell into place like amazingly. There was a piece of land that I'd always looked at near where my husband's grandfather lived, kind of the same stretch. And I had said, like, probably on our first year of marriage, like, if I could live anywhere, I want to live right here. And we ended up, we were actually in contract on like 6 acres and an old farmhouse in Colorado when we knew we were ready to move. And all of a sudden I'm looking at Zillow and like this land pops up and I was like, Evan, I can't figure out where it's located, but this looks like a really good deal. And he looks at it and a couple hours later he goes, I'm not even gonna tell you where this is. And I was like, okay, well then don't. And of course he does. And then I was really angry because it was right next to where I said, like, I want to live right there. And I was like, why did you even tell me that? Like, this is frustrating. We can't do this. Like, that would be way too big of a jump. Like, we cannot do that. But we did. So we listed our house that we lived in Texas within like a couple days. And it sold within like a month and a half.
Wow.
And we made an offer contingent on that sale. We actually were still trying to figure out how to come up with the rest of the funds until like right before. They never contacted us to verify we had the money.
Perfect.
So we did it. And yeah, that was in 2020 and then moved 2021. So it was like a really fast like turnaround for sure. Cause I think we listed in October and we moved out in December. We were in our motorhome for a few months, and then like May or April, we moved to Colorado. And we bought land with nothing. I mean, it had fences. It's 100 acres that we live on. So we had to start from scratch. So power, water, everything. And it's been a process. And now everyone comes here and looks who it came when we first bought it. And they're like, wow, you guys have done a lot, which I always really appreciate, because we just feel like there's so much more to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been a process, for sure. And then that fall we moved 5 cows to Colorado, which was kind of funny which you guys will get a kick out of this. We moved them in a trailer up through Amarillo, and we stayed in a horse hotel with them. And the lady was like, I've never had this before, but they're like our pet cows. Like, they're not the regular, like, they're total pets. So
Right.
yeah, they stayed in a horse hotel. She's like, I guess I don't have like doggins or anything. Like, I don't know. So yeah, we moved them up here, and it was quite a battle to feel settled here. But I finally do. Like, it's taken a while. So, and then our herd, we bought a herd from somebody, and we've just slowly been adding to it. I launched our website, and that's been hard, starting a new business, because essentially we're starting from scratch. We'd sold beef in the past, but it's a totally different venture. And it's always hard. Thankful for people like Carrie, who tell her parents and everyone to buy from me.
Well, it's not
Yeah.
hard to convince people because it's delicious. And I mean,
Delicious. I have such a hard time. That's like, I don't know. Probably need to be more pushy, but someone today like commented, they shared, our meat and someone else's meat, and the other person was like, ours is the best. And I'm like, I couldn't say that, but it is.
it is though. Well, especially, in a place like Southern California where we don't really have those options for, fresh beef, and
Yeah.
and the options that are available are, very, very, very pricey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you guys have a subscription model, or is it just order what you want?
So that is my eventual goal, is to do, we did like a CSA before where it's just monthly shipping. I don't have enough customer base to be able to ship right now on a regular basis, and enough inventory, but we should, by the end of this year, probably be able to do that. It's also a seasonal thing, right? Like the cows are ready to butcher at a certain time. And so
Yeah.
there's to have a space to keep all that inventory. So we're working towards that. Right now I'm posting like groups of boxes. So it's usually about 10 to 15 pounds of meat, that you can basically like say, hey, I want box number 2, and then I'll bill you and ship it out.
Okay.
Kind of what we're doing for now. And that's usually about once a month, depending on inventory. I really, because of even my nursing background, like I really have a passion for healthy food. And so I don't want to give up the direct market beef ever. My husband has like wanted to throw in the towel, because it takes marketing, whereas we could do our operation where we just sell at the sale barn, and probably in some ways right now make more. But my goal, and even Carrie talked about the price point, is I really want to make good, nutritious beef available to people, and pork. We have done pork in the past. That's really, the goal. And eventually, we have actually some accommodations on the ranch. So we want to do some agritourism. I had mentioned my in-laws taught sustainable agriculture, so we'd love to do workshops and really expand that side of things as well, to kind of bring people in. My husband and I, like I've said, we've worked together now for really our whole marriage, of 15 years, side by side. Even when I was nursing, I was doing some with him. I remember early on, like I was his right-hand person. So like I'd be off a day and I would be in a paint suit painting. So we both really have a passion to also impact marriages. And so we've talked about hosting some like, workshops or weekends where couples working together or wanting to work together, even on a side hustle, can really learn. And we're still learning. But give some insight into
That'd be great.
and what isn't. So that's something we're looking at developing as well. that's another, I guess you had asked about resources. We had hired a business coach probably about 4 years ago, and he was phenomenal. His name is Stan Ward, and he it's his first couple he'd ever worked with, and he told us, if you guys if I feel like this goes into like realm of like you need some help in your marriage, I'm just gonna call it out. He never had to. I'm sure there was a few times we thought he might, but that was huge. Like if you or your spouse runs their own business, do that. Like 100%. Hire someone to from the outside give you some feedback on what you can change and what to shift and how to communicate better. That was a huge asset. It was kind of like us doing counseling in a lot of ways because we learned, how we both work in the process. But that's a big yes for me.
Do you have any employees that help you? I'm sure on the construction side there are, but have you tried to slow down a little bit with everything you're doing, building out the website, marketing, things like that?
Yeah, I do outsource a lot. I'm gonna cry. My best friend was my assistant for years. We did everything together. I homeschooled her daughter while she was working in my office. And when we moved, she wasn't moving with us. So that was really, really, really hard. And that was probably a big impact on the transition as well. Because
Yeah.
that suddenly fell on just me. So I've been figuring it out. We've outsourced a lot of things. I have a great bookkeeper now. Shout out to you, Cassie. And I have my in-laws moved about a year after us, and they now live on the ranch. And then my dad and my stepmom now live here on the ranch as well. So that's helped a lot. My stepmom is a retired school teacher, so she's helped with school on and off with the kids. My in-laws jump in with the ranching stuff constantly. My father-in-law does a ton. So that's a huge, huge blessing. I don't know that we could even be pushing forward without their help. So I'm very thankful for that. We would like to eventually hire on help with the ranch. It's just not there yet.
Right.
And then we have a crew of guys, with the construction we've had for quite a while. So yeah, they're like family. They're actually here working and visiting right now, one of them.
How often do you get to see your friend that you left?
Um, we go to Texas quite often, so I get to see her every so often. Yeah, we were just talking about, because we really did. I mean, she lived next door. Like, our lives were so intertwined, and I think we like looking back, both of us have said like we didn't realize what we had.
Yeah.
And it was such a blessing. But I'm so thankful it was that time in our life when we both had like small children, because I can't imagine not having had both of us having that support. So, because I don't think either of us feel like we fully have that now. And we're both just in better places in understanding ourselves and everything else. So, yeah.
Did you guys help each other? I mean, obviously, probably with watching the kids, but what other, tasks like cooking or just support?
Yeah. So, I mean, because she worked for us, she helped me with everything.
Everything.
It was just, and that was the great thing with her is, it just depended every day. I mean, there were some days where I like, hey, I'm not going to get home. Can you start dinner? And she would. Um, and, that's unusual, right? Like usually you have an assistant, they're just in the office. But honestly, I don't know how we would have gotten through that season without that.
Yeah.
So I'm super thankful. My kid would go over and like, poop in her yard. So we were real close.
Love that.
With your
That's a
potty
true
training
friend.
Yeah.
Oh, other ventures. I read something about hemp. So what are you
Yeah.
guys doing with that?
I'm not promoting it a ton right now. I do have it. We kind of just, when we moved, it kind of slowed down a little bit. We grew hemp. I don't even know what year it was, honestly. And the market was oversaturated that year, with the hemp industry because everyone got into it at the same time. And suddenly we have all this flower of hemp flower, and like, what are we going to do? And so we decided to launch our own products, which I actually loved. I loved creating them. I love making them. It's so fun. And I'm really passionate about the health side of it. Again, because of my nursing background. But for me personally, I had migraines and it completely got rid of them. So that was huge. So yeah, I don't even, again, don't know what year it was, but we have Twin Pines hemp and we sell full spectrum CBD products. I eventually want to mix the beef and the CBD and do a tallow cream with both, but I haven't quite got there yet. But yeah, I keep inventory and I still sell it. I'm just not actively marketing it, which is my big downfall. I am not a good marketer. I mean, I enjoy it. It's not been a priority.
You're very creative. I mean, obviously you have a passion with food, right? And health and
Oh,
helping
absolutely.
people feel better in a more organic way. And that is weaved throughout every part of your life. I mean, even with who you ended up marrying and his family and what they did and what you're doing now. And it's kind of interesting to see how much that's all weaved together. And so yeah,
Mhm.
I would buy all kinds of things from you because you're an expert in that area, and that does seem to be one of your grounding passions for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you point that out. Yeah, no, it definitely is.
I'm seeing so many similarities between what Kaylee is trying to do with Sassanamics and what Madison has been doing, just with growing all these like amazing business ventures, but they all seem like they're like passion projects that are,
Yes.
making you money and sustaining you and your family. And it it's really great to see, because I think, people can get so easily stuck with doing the 9 to 5 and going to work and, not you know, finding fulfillment from it. And I think the fact that, you're able to make these passions come to life and be able to sustain you and your family and help other people is just like so refreshing and like cool to see.
Right. Yeah,
Yeah.
you have to pay the bills, but
Mhm.
we all have our passions that are deep inside us that pop out whenever they have a chance.
Mhm.
And sometimes we have to put them back to pay the bills and to
Yeah.
survive, depending on where we're at in our lives. But as soon as we have a chance to get them out again, we do. And yeah, it's just, I mean, it's so many people's dreams, right? To get to do what you love for a living, and get to find ways to intertwine that. But yeah, it's really interesting, Madison, with your husband. It's kind of like how fate, and I'm sure we're naturally kind of drawn to our interests, right? There was something about that cowboy that, you something about that got
Worried
to
about.
you, even though you tried to pawn him off.
Oh,
Thank goodness I didn't get on a flight too quick.
Yeah.
right? Good thing you waited till my wedding.
Yeah, I waited till your wedding.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's so true. I saw someone posted something the other day. It was kind of along the same vein of like someone was telling him like you need to just like stick to your niche. And she was like, no, I have other passions. And I think there's a balance in it, right? Like it becomes like, are you distracted? Like, is this distracting from, and that's why I'm saying, like, I kind of put the CBD on pause because I knew I needed to put my focus elsewhere. Um, and so I think just keeping that in mind constantly, like, is this a distraction or is it actually playing into the whole picture? Because it easily can be, if you allow it. But
Yeah.
those side hustles, but they also bring so much value if you can lean into them.
Yeah, and
What
like
would
give them a chance to see what, grows and develops into something, big. I think it's great that you're open to like, you're like, hey, like what if we try this? And I'm sure some things some of the ideas maybe don't come to fruition all the way, or they don't quite turn out how you were expecting, but it's like the willingness and the know-how to try it and then see what it grows into. One more thing I wanted to touch on is, so you are like running this ranching business, and by the way, I saw that you've been out herding cattle on horseback now.
Yeah.
I'm very proud of you for
Oh my gosh, if you only knew.
but so you're doing all this, and then at the same time you're homeschooling, you're educating your 3 kids. Like how do you find balance with those 2 roles?
Oh gosh. It's really hard. I'm not gonna lie. And I think it's because I've had to shift my mindset so much on homeschooling, or schooling, I should say, because I didn't grow up homeschooled. My husband did. So my husband's dyslexic, and has learned obviously like by doing, and he has a big passion for that of like, you don't need all this education to be successful, because he is very successful.
Mhm.
And he doesn't have capacity, he would now. So I think that's one of the big things that's really hard, is like our difference in views on some of it. But ultimately, okay, thank you. We have a bottle calf that needs fed. He's reminding me. Okay. Okay. You need. He's outside on that. Okay. 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 Go ahead. Thank you. Probably been out for like. Okay.
He's
Got it.
hungry, Mom.
Yeah.
Gotta go feed that calf.
And even things like that, like there's just those things of like feeding a calf or watching a C-section, and the things that you naturally learn versus things you're going to learn in a book. And I'll start talking to people and they're like, why are you worried about doing science? Like, your kids learned science today. And I don't think that way, because I am totally a textbook nerd. Like, that is me. So it's hard for me to shift out of that. And I've had to learn to balance what it looks like to learn organically, just with our way of life, versus what actually needs to happen in a more controlled environment. And there does need to be both. But as an example, my 6-year-old he'll be 7 this year, and he almost knows his whole alphabet. But with him, I've tried to like really lean into letting him be the lead on like what we're going to do. And I've started to see him actually have interest and want to learn, versus I would have been fighting him to do it, 6 months ago.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, it's a constant battle. And the things that they're so smart, and they're just sponges, and they soak up so much. And so if I can just input a little bit every day, they're learning way more than I realize. And I've had to remind myself of that. Now there are times where I know, again, because I'm not a super routine person, that I am probably a little too lax, and I do need to like hone in a little more. But it's, again, keeping that like ebb and flow of like, okay, we didn't learn this well enough. We need to actually focus in on this and not just be like willy-nilly about it. So I don't know how I balance it. I don't a lot of days, and we're having to then look at things that we, missed or work on. And homeschool is shifting for us a lot right now, because I now have a middle schooler, which middle school is totally different, and it does need that more structured focus. So she might be doing a co-op this year, so that I don't have to do that, right? Like, I might have to outsource a little more because I don't have capacity.
Absolutely. I think like one theme that I've noticed is that you're always willing to like reach out and find resources and not try to like be everything or be the expert at anything. And I think that's like such a valuable lesson to learn, that we don't have to be the experts in every field, and that there's resources available to help.
I've definitely grown in that area for sure. Probably not how I naturally was like in high school. But I definitely, yeah, have grown in that. And a resource for any homeschool moms out there is Wild and Free is amazing. I just went to their conference in April, and they pour into you as moms, and just remind you that you're capable, because I think we often think like only teachers know how to teach. And that's been a huge resource for me. And even like you were saying, I remember like vividly one conference I went to, and this mom was talking about like she's a writer and she actually has her own writing curriculum, an amazing writer. But her kid's struggling in math, and she's like, "What in the world am I going to do?" And so she took the textbook to the garage, said, I'll be back in a little bit," and she like read it as fast as she could, and then came back and did it. And so it is a lot of like just figuring it out.
Think it's so important to, like, that's something you learn in nursing. I remember when I was in nursing school, they said if you learn nothing else, like nurses are tend to be very resourceful. And I kind of laugh because like my dad was a firefighter growing up, and he was known as like a MacGyver who could fix anything with nothing, and that kind of thing. And nursing kind of pushes you in that direction too. Like sometimes you
For
get,
sure.
you know, in the hospital where I work, you'll get orders to do something with something, and you're like, okay, well, I guess there's not really a clear route of how to do it. It's just do it. And so you kind of just figure it out and use the resources that are available to you. And I'm sure that has served you in growing your businesses and homeschooling, that kind of like, all right, we're going to figure this out, find the resources, and I might not have the answer right now, but I will figure out how to get it.
And after I
Yeah.
figure it out, I might decide I don't want to do it. And that's okay
Absolutely.
too.
Yes.
Yes. Yes. I honestly don't think I'm naturally inclined that way. I think, I don't know, it's just like upbringing. I think there is a lot of fear with me in trying new things, honestly. But I am so thankful for a spouse who pushes me past that. Because I don't know that it's honestly, my natural inclination. But I think that's, I mean, the reason to have people around you who are pushing you and growing you.
So thank you so much for taking time to talk us through your life and, the good and the bad and all the beautiful things that you're doing and creating. You working on anything new?
I mean, the accommodations is huge, and
Yeah.
I mean, we love having people out here and getting to experience what we get to experience. I mean, that really is the goal of getting people to connect with animals and the soil, the dirt, as much as we can, because I know there's so many people that don't get that opportunity.
Yeah.
And we had a couple out yesterday, and they went out and fed the calf, and it was just great for them to get out of Denver and get to do that. And so um, I think that's really a huge piece. We're big hospitality people, so that's a huge piece of what we're wanting to do. We hosted a concert a couple like last weekend on the ranch, which was super fun, and we're going to do that often. So yeah, I really hope that that part of what we're doing grows, because we really want to bring people in.
It's been so much fun to catch up with you. It's been so long.
Yeah. Ditto. We should do it more often.
I